As you guys know, I told you that I would be putting out a weird, spooky, odd video every week for October, which I have done, and even remove some based on what you guys have been, telling me. I guess like cryptids and stuff, like unseen creatures and unverified creatures aren't really your cup of tea. A lot of you been saying about more ghost stories and things like that, which I can do, but you didn't really give me a lot of time. One thing that a lot of people have asked me though is what got me into the paranormal and the creepy and all of that. So I guess I'll just explain how I got to where I am, in the interest of paranormal stuff, or some of the first things that sparked my interest in the paranormal. Now, I have not been a man of money at all my entire life. My family wasn't. They worked hard for everything that they have. Not that, most people don't, but we really did. We lived in a trailer and in and out of relations' houses that would take us in and things of that nature. Bouncing, like getting a temporary trailer to living with my grams and things like that. But during that time, my parents were saving money, and they bought a cute little house. Eventually, they bought a cute little house over in West Milton, Pennsylvania. It wasn't a house to live in. It was actually a store, I guess, for quite some time. But lucky for us, by trade, my father was a construction worker, a craftsman, a carpenter. And so his idea was he's just going to gut the inside of the house and make it a home for us, which was great because at that time my mom just had another son, my little brother, and we needed the room, and we needed to stop relying on family members and other people in order to do these things. But this would all make sense years later. That store that they bought to refurbish and got out and turned into a home wasn't just any store. It wasn't a big building, nothing special there. It was an old antique shop. I mean, this sounds like straight out of some Stephen King novel or something like that. But it was an old antique shop, and I remember like the first time they took me over to see it there, and it was old. It needed a lot of work. There was like an iron spiraled staircase, like as soon as you walked in the door to go to the basement. It was filled with dusty trinkets and things that I didn't know what they were. The basement was filled with stacks of papers and books and newspapers from like 30 years prior. But I always remember that iron staircase that it was spiraling right down the center of the house. I always thought it was so cool. But it eventually was replaced for a more normal set of steps and things like that. But before I even know what ghosts or the paranormal were, that's when it started happening, like things in that house. And I do believe completely that house was haunted. For instance, that in our bedrooms, me and my brother would have to share a bedroom. We were both little kids or whatever. I built a little fort under my bed. And I was big into like radios and stuff like that, and like Indiana Jones and exploring. So under the bed was like my fort. That was my hideout, so to say. And whenever I had free time or it was getting close to bed and you had like an hour or two to goof around, maybe you were grounded from the TV or we had homework to do, I would go into my fort under the bed. That was until I started hearing growls, like animal growls, coming from behind me, but you couldn't be behind me because behind me under the bed was just the wall. My bed was right up in the corner of a room, and that was the wall. My feet were down there. I had like blankets and stuff pushed up against for the walls of the fort, and I would hear growls coming from it. And I told my parents, and they said it was probably animals from outside, which didn't make sense because these growls would sound like they came from inches from my head. And I couldn't attribute it to any kind of animal I've ever heard, at least to that point, and not now. I was a grown man, some 40 years later. That was a weird one, and that went on for years until we moved. That never stopped. There was times when I would just walk by the room, and you would hear this same old growl. And it wasn't a toy, it wasn't nothing like that. Believe me, I cried and kicked and moaned about it enough that they looked through that whole place. It wasn't nothing to explain it. They probably thought I was making it up for attention, or it really was something outside. I don't know. But yeah, that was pretty creepy in that. I mean, it's an antique shop. I mean, there was still stuff in the basement that was left. I mean, anything could be attached to it, so to say. But once again, this is before my general interest in the paranormal. Also, I would consistently have this dream, and I still have it to this day now and then, of an older woman staring out of a window that would be in my parents' room, looking out over the yard, where the kids would play. And funny thing is, there was no window where the window was in the dream. It was never there. Well, years later, I'd bring this up in a discussion back when my father was still alive about this dream I would always have. And while it was always the same, just this elderly woman standing there at the window looking out and smiling. Sometimes she would wave, but most of the time she would just stand there with her hands folded into each other watching us play in the dream. But I brought this dream up. I'm like, yeah, and I kept having, we were talking about where places we used to live, and I'm like, yeah, that dream, I just never understood it, never seen it in a movie, why is this, what's this, and there's not even a window there, so it doesn't even make sense. And then my dad brought to my attention that back when he was redoing the antique shop into a livable home, that there actually was a window there, and he replaced it with a wall, moved the window to the southern side of the room, a bigger window, a newer one. Always thought that was really weird. I mean, if the dream happened once or twice, so be it, but constantly, the same woman, all that, it's creepy, especially for a little kid. Then, I also remember a time when my great-great-great-grandfather, I think, died. My dad's dad. And he left my dad a bunch of his old hats. And these are hats from the early 1900s. Real fancy hats. They were wrapped up. I was told never to touch them. Don't even look at them wrong. They're worth more than anything I'd ever touch. Blah, blah, blah. Very expensive. Very expensive hats. But about 9 or 10, I'm a kid of the 80s, 9 or 10 years old, I got to, stay at home while they went off and did other things. I.e. my parents got to, whatever they had to do, I could stay there and be trusted not to burn the house down. And I would try on these hats. I would sneak into the closet and very carefully take out the cool, because some of them look like cowboy hats, some of them look like banker hats or business hats, things like that. I really thought they were cool and awesome. So when they were gone, I would sneak in, always, root around in their stuff and to see what they had going on. And I remember once he also got like a couple coats. I want to say trench coats, but not quite. But they're like a lot like dusters that you would call them. Way too big for me at the time, although I was a portly little boy. But I remember this one time, I was trying on the hats, and I put one on, and I took one of the old dusters out of the closet and put that on, and I think I was pretending to be like a 1930s cop or something. I know, like, I was watching Dick Tracy at the time, and I was like, give me your, give me your guns, whatever, blah, 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 and things like that. And there was a body length mirror right there, and I'm doing my little kid shit, and I looked down at my shoes, because I was thinking, man, if I had some cowboy boots, I'd look pretty awesome. And I remember looking down, and then looking up at the mirror, and behind me in the mirror was this old man. I've never seen him before in my life. He was wearing the same hat I had on my head, and he was dressed like you'd picture like a 1920s gangster to look, but he was old. He was aged, pale, and I'm just staring at him in complete disbelief. And he has the biggest smile on his face, and I can remember his features and everything. I remember him, but it's hard to describe. And that smile, and he had gloves on, and he like looked at me in the mirror and like put a hand up to his hat and like tipped it at me, like smiling. Like, I did not feel anything menacing or bad at all from this. But it scared the shit out of me, and I twisted around real quick, like, who the hell is this old guy in my house? And there's nothing there. There was nobody there. So I stuffed all that stuff as quickly as I could back into the bags, and I never went into that room or closet again while we lived there. It absolutely petrified me. My gram and my mom would constantly see faces of people looking in the windows of the house, because like this was like a one story. It was like kind of built on a hillside, so like you could see the lower basement, but only on the back half of the house. Everything else was like even with the ground, whatever you want to call it, like a ranch. And there's like 4 windows in the front of the house. This house isn't very big, but it's big enough for what we need. And all the time, like my grandma and my mom would be like, "Oh shit!" and stand up like, "What the?" Someone was just looking in that window. Then everyone would rush out to the front porch and look around to see who it was, and there was never anybody. There was never anybody there. But it kept happening, and they all described the same guy. He had like a beanie hat on, a fisherman's cap like this, and he'd be in a flannel or some type of flannel. I think it was red or blue, and he wouldn't say anything. He'd just like look, and then they'd notice him. They'd all scream, and they'd jump up and run, and then everyone would run out, try to see who the peeping Tom was, and no one would be there. There are plenty of times that house, still to this day, this house freaks me out. I'm still tempted to get my ghost equipment and go out there and, maybe the current owners would let me do something there. That'd be great. Voices. I swear you could hear people talking in the basement when you're upstairs. There's no one in the basement. There's nothing down there to make anybody talk. I remember once I was sitting in the living room watching TV, and I heard like a series of bangs like out in the kitchen, And so I get up and run out to the kitchen. I figured something fell or something crazy like that. But nothing did. And I'm like, alright, whatever. So I go back to the living room, resume watching what I'm watching. Probably Power Rangers or something awesome like that. And I would hear a man yelling. Sometimes I would hear a girl talking, but never to each other. It sounded like two separate conversations in time. I remember when that happened, I ran outside and I stayed on my porch for like 2 hours until my parents got home. I refused to go in there, back into that house. It was so bad. I couldn't have pets. Every time I got a pet, it would die in a week. And there's a such thing, I understand like you can't neglect animals, but this was like 5 of us taking care of the animal, and you don't keep killing your pets. They don't keep dying. But these creatures did. They'd last a week, they'd have all the comforts of the world, and they would still die. And I got to the point that my dad just said no more pets. He's tired of digging holes in the yard. Those were crazy. There's so much things that happen there. So many things. We would find things in the yard, old, like 50, 60 years old. I mean, and I'm like in my 40s now, so it'd be like 100 years old now. It was just crazy. Also scratching. You would hear scratching on the walls, sometimes from the attic. And the attic was just a crawl space. So you couldn't like really stand up in it or anything, and it wasn't like the scratch like a squirrel or a mouse would make. It was like deliberate, I want you to hear this kind of scratching, the oddest thing. Creepy. Very, very creepy. I got plenty more stories from that house. I call it the antique shop, or my first home. If you want to hear more, what got me more into the investigatory paranormal world, just let me know. If you have any questions about this place, let me know. If you want to hear more, comment below, let me know. Hope that's a little spook juice for you that'll hold you over. Might be some more stories to come to whet that appetite or that palate. But if you want to hear more, let me know. Tell me some of your first haunted house experiences. And I take a lot of that with a grain of salt because I understand how memories get corrupted over age and disassociation and distortion of memory. I'm well aware of this, but that's not what I'm talking about. This was 100% real. 100% happening right in front of me in this place, and it was a creepy feeling place. I wonder if it still feels that way. Probably does. Hey, happy Halloween, and be careful out there. The veil's at its thinnest right now, and I worry about all of you. Please like, subscribe, and share. Until next week, see what else I can drop that might be spooky or odd. If you guys want to hear something specific, let me know. That's the best way to get it through to me, or comment about it. Alright, I love you guys. Agents of Calamity, this is Crypto Creep. I'm outie.